Recording in progress.
I manage our data solutions practice. With me here today, I have Nick Schraus, the Senior Manager of Data and Analytics at Detroit Manufacturing Systems. Nick, could you go ahead and introduce yourself and give us a little bit about DMS?
Yep. So my name is Nick Schraus. I've been with Detroit Manufacturing for about 4 years, going on 5. Detroit Manufacturing System is a manufacturing company. We're a Tier 1 automotive supplier. Our primary business is with Ford and Volvo, but we are, open to manufacturing anything. So, yeah, that's a little bit about us.
Awesome. Thank you. So, kind of to kick off our discussion, I want to talk about, there's all the buzz around AI and agents and, what are we going to do with that? How do we get there? And I think we can all agree the first part of that is building a data foundation. Without that data foundation, your AI is not going to give you the right answers to things. And is it going to be consistent? So DMS went through on the journey digital transformation at the moment.
Yep.
So we're going to ask a few questions here and kind of talk about that journey.
Sounds good.
So to start off, can you share with us the initiative that DMS completed or is currently going through in regards to the digital transformation?
Yeah. So when we started, we had the issues of, different data put into different silos, right? We had around 25 different data structures inside of them, so we need to unify that. We had a goal, an aggressive goal to automate our supply chain. So that was another goal. And then, the company itself, we had been doing a lot of just manual tasks, right? We've been pulling data out of one source into an Excel file and then, doing Excel gymnastics on top of that, where it's just a repetitive process and it gives us stagnant data.
Yeah, and that's not, something that's uncommon in the industry as a whole. That's not a DMS unique thing. We see that all the time. Excel spreadsheet over there, over here, reporting numbers differently. It's everywhere. So you kind of touched there on a little bit of what it looked like prior to Importa, but can you give us a picture of what reporting and analytics looked like before starting this digital transformation journey?
Yeah, so we were doing data and analytics beforehand. We had a director of Smart Factory who was helping our production team by grabbing data out of some of our production systems, and they had set up a data warehouse in order to do that. And there was things that we were doing already, but the biggest problem was that not everything that we had as far as like system wise. So some of our HRIS systems, our ERP system, it wasn't accessible at that point. So this was a way where we could start getting to some more of those additional layers of data and start unifying them into like one big central location on a pane of glass.
Okay. And Smart Factory, is that like a internal tool, like a data warehouse type thing?
No, that's an employee that works for us. He's been he handles a lot of the, it's called Smart Factory 4.0, and he's in charge of, from everything from AI to data and analytics, kind of just exploring different areas of innovation.
Okay. So you had data trapped in silos, and trying to get that data in one place. Were there any other goals from other business groups at DMS?
Not at the moment. It was pretty much, we had our CEO, Bruce Smith, and Tom Schwartz. They had an overall goal that they wanted to be collecting data on everything so that we would be able to, you know, in a way, mic up the plant so that if something was going wrong, we would know beforehand. So in order to do that, we had to get the technology to make that happen. And a starting, phase of that is getting a data lake and a data solution that can bring all of your data sources into one area.
Okay. So you mentioned some manual Excel processes and things of that nature. Given some of the frustrations there and time spent getting those together, was there a specific reason that DMS started to look at a tool like Incorda or just the other data warehouses?
Yeah, it again goes down to the initiative, like I've talked about, of, we really needed to start unifying all of our data. Both of our CEO and CTO are very technology driven, right? They want to be at the forefront. So this was one of the logical next steps for us. So we had Max, who was in charge of the supply chain initiative, starting to field out different areas of how he could create a data lake, and that was kind of phase one of his overall goal to automate supply chain. And then you had myself with Tom working on, okay, we have all of these different systems. How are we really going to get them into one area, and then what are we going to do with them once we get them there? So that was kind of always the plan and the pain point for us.
Okay. And so, remind me, you were brought in, so after POV, so Incorda was kind of known to the organization already. What ultimately landed DMS on using Incorda over some of the other tools that you researched?
So we did research a couple other tools, and there was quite a number of things that Incorda fit for us. So the company culture was great. It was always like you felt like you were working with a partner rather than, a salesperson. Number two, which was a big one for me, was they were willing to put their money where their mouth was. They came out and did the POV. They met us in person. They had conversations with our IT. They had our conversations with our C-suite. And they said, okay, let's kick this off. You have a problem. We think we have a solution, so let's do this together, and we'll do it for free. And, if at the end of this POV things go well, maybe we can, work on a longer term solution. So that was a big, sticking point for me. And then we looked at a couple other solutions. Some of them were just too big and too much for what we really needed at the time, which the cost was way higher. And then we looked at possibly doing something internally, which we have some of the skill sets to do, but we probably would have had to use a third-party company to build it for us. And then, you would have got the keys to the castle and said, what do I do with this now? So it would have probably, costed us a little bit more on the hiring side of things of, okay, now I have to hire for a data engineer, a data architect, an additional BI analyst, and all those types of things. So, that was kind of the things that really checked the box for myself when looking at Incorda.
Gotcha. As you mentioned the POV, the proof of value, where Incorda and sometimes another partner, a systems integration partner, will come in and pick a use case or two use cases, give that value, and then say, hey, we've proven that we can do this. How do you like the platform? You ready to go? Do you think that was beneficial from your perspective to have that up front before signing anything?
Absolutely, because it's crucial in a lot of these solutions that you have your IT team with you lockstep. And I say that because a lot of, and it's not just data lake solutions, but a lot of solutions nowadays, they'll say, oh, we can connect to your ERP, or we can connect to this and that. But when it comes down to it, it's a massive undertaking that, IT didn't necessarily sign up for. They're just a necessary person. So having them sit with the Encorta team and kind of looking at, okay, how does this data agent connect? Does it meet our security standards? What do we have to do to make it meet our security standards? How does it work? That was a really big thing, because before we could even get the project started with Encorta, we had to put up the proof of validation, call it sandbox, right?
Yeah.
And for that to happen, our IT had to get brought in earlier than later, which generally I feel like, you're kind of sending and dumping something onto IT's lap saying, hey, I bought this, now can you make it work? So with them being in the initial phases, I think it went a lot smoother than, maybe something that we would have purchased that wouldn't have had the culture that Encorta had in their proof of validation.
It sounds like a lot of collaboration, both internally at DMS and with Encorta, to help kind of make that successful.
Yes, absolutely.
Pivoting now a little bit, so you've chosen the solution, you've had the POV. Now we're going to talk a little bit about implementation. So from your perspective, can you tell us a little bit of what implementation looked like?
Unfortunately, it's a little hard for me because the implementation side was done a lot more with IT to get everything spun up. One of my counterparts, Dan, he was the senior IT engineer who really set all this up, was supposed to be with us today, but unfortunately couldn't make it. But he was really pivotal in getting the server set up and the IPsec tunnel for the data agent, and making everything truly secure. And I can't tell you much about the infrastructure and hardware and all that type of what went into the IT portions of it. But what I can say is that he said when we were doing these original calls with him that it was a lot easier than other projects that he's had to set up. It went really smooth. It didn't have a lot of hiccups where, some things may last months to years to get set up and working efficiently. This was, a matter of weeks. So some good feedback from the IT team on that.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. And unfortunately we don't have Dan, but thank you for sharing that. From, a partner's perspective, from Holland Parker perspective, the implementation, having you as a project champion, it's just, I can't say enough how important that was to having a successful project, both initially and ongoing. Nick has done a great job, helping run these projects and look for new initiatives and, really bring a ton of value to DMS from what we've seen on our site. So we're going to go to present day now. Can you walk us through what the first use case was and why you decided to tackle that one?
Yeah, so our first use case was actually with our finance team. It was called the KPI SOA project. It was something that they had been doing for the executive staff, which rolled up all of our consolidated financials. So this was a manual process. It was done through Excel, adaptive to Excel, and it was a very time-consuming manual process where you had to go out and gather a bunch of different data. In particular, I believe there was 110 different metrics that they were pulling together, and they came from 6 different sources. So some of them were strictly financial, some of them were HR related, safety related, production related. So for us, this was a really good baseline project because it touched so many different areas of the organization. But on top of that, it was so manual and it had so much opportunity to save somebody's time and, even maybe increase the accuracy of some of the numbers that were coming out. It just seemed like a perfect fit for a starting point, at least.
Yeah, I remember this project and going through it together. We were marrying up some adaptive data with SAP data and grabbing historicals from adaptive and unifying it with SAP. And it was a good project. We we tackled a tough one at first
Yep.
to start off with, but it was good. So since that time, have there been other use cases, or well, I know there has been. What are some of the other use cases that have been tackled?
So since then, we've been tackling quite a bit, honestly. There's some groups that are really data hungry. Our purchasing group in particular, I love working with them because they're so data hungry and so, they're always coming to me with, hey, can you build a supplier spend report and an indirect spend report, and they really work with you lockstep the whole way to make sure that you have good data validation, good champions on their end. So they've been awesome to work with. Some of the more, I guess, advanced things that we've been doing is we've been working with our HR team to pull data out of our HR system into Encorda, and then we have a team that's run by a counterpart of mine, Mike and Nick. They will do RPA, so
Robotic process automation.
yep. So they'll go into Encorda through business schemas that we create and start pulling out data and start populating fields for the HR team. So populating documents based on certain criteria and then sending that out to different areas of the business so that a human doesn't have to do that anymore. The human's still somewhat in the loop because you still have to validate and you always want to trust but verify. But the manual task of going in and filling out a Word form and all of that has been eliminated at this point. So there's been some really cool things that we've been able to do on, just very simple levels of, this used to be done in SAP every day, and we've now dumped it into Excel, and now we have stagnant data. But then, partnering with the, call it the RPA team and the automation team, has really set the bar high for some of the things that we can do.
Yeah, that's awesome. As you've kind of gone through more and more use cases, and purchasing department has seen more and more of what Encorda can do, and kind of also just what you and your team can do, and the RPA team can do. So Encorda can enable those, but y'all are also thinking outside of the box and doing things. You're leveraging Encorda, but in a way that most people don't think about, which is really cool. But as you've kind of gone through this, is the buzz of Encorda, or more departments, more people wanting to be like, hey, how do we start using it? We want to start using the data too.
Yeah, so it's starting to spread more and more. There's an initiative to reduce, automated manual time. So through that coming top down, obviously there's a little bit more use of Encorda, but just from starting to get some of those results, you can see more people are starting to understand some of the, true, power of what we're trying to do. One of the projects we just partnered with Holland Parker on and had one of your employees, Trenton, do for us was we had just a simple report that somebody would take out of SAP every day to see how our negative inventory and supply chain, and then they would have to go back into SAP and look at each line to see why it's negative. So they'd have to keep, it was almost like a loop that they'd have to do, and then they had, I guess, rules of why it was negative, like somebody forgot to transfer inventory or somebody forgot to backflush or whatever it might have been. And what Trenton was able to do was take those rules and put it all on one pane of glass for us to say, okay, we have X amount of negative inventory, and here's why. These parts weren't backflushed properly, these weren't scanned properly. So that was a really awesome thing that he did for our supply chain, and something that they've really bought into and have been using and liking. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
Yeah. So as you've gotten more and more comfortable with Encorda, how has it changed your day to day?
Well, it's completely changed my day to day in a number of different ways, right? So I spent a lot of my time early on in my career in change management and launch. So number one, I do data and analytics now. So, I do a BI reporting is probably the easiest way to say that it's changed my day to day. But beyond that, it's, for me, just being able to see what we can do to improve somebody's, daily work has been awesome. Coming from departments like change management and launch, it's almost like you're a necessary evil. Nobody really wants to work with you because you're making everybody's job harder in a way. To where this has been just a game changer for me because I get to make everybody's job easier.
Yeah.
So that has been, one of my favorite things about coming into this role and doing that. But beyond that, it's just been every day is something different. I'm either building something or I'm working with, you guys on what's next or what can we do next, or I'm working with, an SME to say, okay, what is the problem that we're trying to solve, and coming up with a either easy solution or it might be a more complex solution, but kind of working through that from like a project management level, and then from that taking it down and delivering a finished product so that they can start to use it and their brain starts thinking of what's next. So making sure that there's always a what's next, because the more what's next we get, the more people are going to start using it, and the more it's going to be able to save them, time and make our business better.
Yeah, that's great. I wanted to kind of point out too, some of these initiatives we have come in and help you with, but there's quite a number of them that I think you and Alice, one of your teammates, have just tackled by yourselves. It kind of speaks a little bit to how quickly you can pick up on a platform like Incorda, and its ease of use. So, and also kind of how smart you guys are.
Well, I'll say definitely having the implementation partner to have your hand held a little bit in the beginning was, I would say it's very nice. I wouldn't say maybe it's crucial, but it would borderlines that. But, just a shout out to Incorda in general. When we were working on some of our use cases in the beginning and we were kind of just getting our footing together, we had, we have a sister company, Kinetic, that we also help out and support their data and analytics. And they're a newer company. They do, they are contract manufacturers for, industry agnostic products. So they're here to help any company looking for, a starting point, right? So they are a little bit newer, and getting the data and analytics into their organization was much easier because they didn't have traditional systems. But one of the things that they wanted to do was they were creating, with one of their newer customers, they were trying to find a way to proactively see which parts they were going to run out of during their builds. So it was a proactive look instead of a reactive look. And it was a huge initiative from their customer that they were going to be able to do this and have it accurate and, a daily thing. So they were doing it through Excel. It was taking them a ton of time. And there was so many different variables to it of when a truck's coming in, how many they're going to be shipping out, which parts are used on the same component. They really just didn't have the best way of doing it. So we took the project on and realized very quickly that we were a little bit in over our heads. So Incorda actually came back and helped us with that project so that we were able to hit the timeline for the customer and give them access to this report that they were, wanting so badly. And it was a really good feeling to have that, that person with, having your back, I guess you could say. They didn't just hang us out to dry and say, well, we already did the POV, so, that was your one. But no, they came back and they were really a true partner on this. So that was a really cool experience.
That's awesome. Yeah. Incorda is always, when you reach out to them, they're always super responsive. They always want to help, which is a good thing. So going back to kind of the use cases and talking about some of the results there, has DMS achieved any quantifiable results?
Yeah, so one of the initiatives from the CEO this year was he wanted to reduce the amount of manual hours saved per week. So that could be obviously, like, I've mentioned a number of times during this chat, just could be complex, it could be not, it could be you move this data from this spot to this spot, and there's a team of us doing it now. So it's not just myself, there's We have, AI engineers. We have the RPA engineers. We have myself and Alice, who works with me on Incorda. We have the IT team supporting us. So it's a big company initiative. And in the Incorda side alone, just on reports that maybe have came from us or you, we're up to 150 hours a week of manual tasks saved.
That's pretty significant.
Yeah, and there are some things that are not counted in that because it may have been partnered with the RPA group, but strictly just from us doing, the getting rid of their repetitive SAP dump or MES dump into an Excel form and then, sending it out and emailing it to everybody and doing whatever you may need to do with it. We're up to 150 hours and counting. There's still more in the pipeline, but as of today, that's where we're at.
Okay. So, are there any other, let's say, non-quantifiable results that are top of mind for you right now?
There have been a couple we've seen. For sure, the one that comes to mind, obviously, and I'm sure you probably see it with a lot of your customers, is data quality, right? Some of the, we've been working together on our commercial project where we've started to see, okay, some of the sheets that they're inputting data on right now don't completely match up. So getting all of that data quality at one standard level has been awesome for us. As we were doing the HR project, it's still in the works because we noticed that the HRIS system wasn't completely calculating some of the totals right that it needed to be. So we had to go back to the company itself and, try and get that worked out. And we're in the process of getting a solution for that right now. But prior to us having Incorda or even taking this project on, that might have gone unnoticed for who knows. That was some of them. And then just some of the ways that we've seen the different levels communicate, I guess you could call it different metrics, I guess you could say. So some of the financial team likes to see things in one way, right? Like a total of what the, metric might be. And some groups will look at it as, okay, it's a total, but we have recovery coming back. So, we are only looking at this portion of it. So trying to unify all of those scenarios at once.
To where it's all consistent. So you have finance looking at it up here at this level, and we're going to slice it a certain way, but it needs to be the same data for this other group.
Yeah. Have you seen anything similar through different companies?
Absolutely. Same thing. Pretty much every client that we have. Just to put it quite simply, when you're talking about finding data mismatches, data doesn't necessarily match from one source to the other, or is this report correct? An easy way to say that is like you can have a report that has TX for Texas, or you can have Texas spelled out. And in a system, a unified system, well, those are two different things. The software doesn't know that they should be the same unless you tell it to. So just in that simple little scenario there, those are things we uncover all the time. And we uncover, well, finance is reporting this number, ops is reporting this number, why are they different? And it's really that process of digging through the why they're different that I think is the most beneficial. Because then you're getting the teams to talk to each other, and that's like where you start to correct the business processes behind the data as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, you've given us a lot of info here about the journey you're on and where you have come so far at DMS. What's next on the roadmap for you guys?
So next is, for me, it's definitely right now, we're in Incorda, I'll say we're working a little bit in a bubble, and it's because of there's just so much work to be doing that, training's been kind of on the back burner. But, my dream for DMS is that, we have a self-serving analytic platform so that each group is able to look at their own data and be able to do their own analytics on it. It may not be everybody in that department. Everybody may not even want to be able to do that. But I'm certain that there are some individuals in each group that want to not have to bug me or bug Alice, or, they want to be able to look at data in their own ways that I may never even be able to think about, that they can, have some actionable insights on. So for me, in the, next year, I really want to start getting more training developed with the broader audience so that we can get some more self-serving analytics. And then, I think you talked about it in the beginning. One of the big things that we're going through right now is this AI timeframe. And in order for us to be able to have good data being either predicted or presented or whatever the case may be with AI, you got to have good data in your data lake. So making sure that we have good quality data inside of all of our source systems, so that, in Corda, if we're connecting to a source system via something that we found in Corda, we're cleaning up the data in the back end, or we're connecting something AI through in Corda, we're giving it and feeding it good data. So,
because data in Corda is connecting directly to a source system, does that give a certain level of trust across the organization? Like, we're connecting directly to the source, so this is prior to any manipulation being done. Does that allow for some sort of trust in reporting?
I would say yes. I think so. I think it just depends on how much sometimes you trust the source data in general, and that gives that just an industry problem, right? Do you actually trust the data in the source system? But being that it's, I always say it's just a digital twin of the data that we're looking at. So if you have, garbage in, garbage out, or if you have good data in, you're going to have good data out. So I do think it gives a level of comfort knowing that you have the same data. But yeah, it just depends on how you feel about the data that you already have.
Right. Yeah, so at least comfort that the data you're receiving in Corda is what is in the source system, not necessarily is your source system correct.
Yeah.
You got to think about that as well.
There's no ability to manipulate the data that you're seeing from, start to finish, right? If it is in the source system as this way, it's going to show up that way, and I can confidently say, okay, we're seeing this. Can you go back and check? And it's always, yep, I see it. So.
Okay. Yeah, and I think we've experienced that a few times together. So, in closing here, based on your experience, POV to now, the whole journey that you've been on so far, what advice would you give to other manufacturers considering similar digital transformation?
Definitely start with the problem. Have a nail ready before you have a hammer, right? Don't just have a hammer and start looking for nails. So start with the problem. And the problem could be a big, huge problem of I want to automate supply chain and start looking at the steps to do that. But at least have a plan would be, number two, make sure your IT team is definitely in with you the whole time. I can't tell you how many times I meet with vendors and they say, well, we can just connect to this and we can do this. And, it either doesn't work out as planned or it becomes, an afterthought because we already have a group of IT people who are working on something that might be somebody else's priority, but then you just drop something in their lap and they say, well, this is priority now. And it just doesn't always work that way. So make sure they know what's going on. You have a good partnership like Dan and I had throughout this, and the whole IT team. And honestly, they had been awesome because it's just not an area that I was familiar with. So making sure that everything was secure from a cybersecurity spot, set up, and working to the best of their ability. I can't say enough good things about making sure that you have that partnership.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds like have clarity.
Yeah.
You know where you're going to start, and know who you're going to need on your team IT. Make sure that they're on board, and really just kind of putting that together before starting the journey. So start with a clear picture.
Yep, and then I would probably also say make sure you have some kind of executive sponsorship, right? This is going to be a big investment for many different reasons: financially, change management, people management. People's jobs are going to change because you're making things easier, so they're going to be able to start working on more high priority, high value stuff. You're going to have, the executive team probably looking at what is their return on some of these things. So you need to be able to understand what you're doing and, in getting some of these manual hours taken care of or replacing some of these systems that may be doing the same thing. But if you have that support from the top, it helps with the change management of the organization to kind of accept the goal of what you're trying to do. And usually what people are trying to do is make everybody's job and life and better. So yeah, so having that support to say, this is the direction that we're going and why, definitely makes my job easier, saying, okay, let's start tackling some of these initiatives and really embracing this as an organization.
Awesome, great. Well, Nick, I just want to thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate you coming here and joining me with this with Incorda for the fireside chat. I want to thank everyone that joined us in the webinar as well.
Thank you.
And thank Incorda for setting this up. So appreciate it. Thanks, Nick.
Thank you.